Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Hello, everyone. This is May. I am so excited to be here today because I have with me a very special guest. She's a friend of mine. She's a colleague and a coach, and I've been watching her. I don't mean to sound old, but I've been watching her growing up, I think, and in this being a coach, and it's so much fun to watch Natalie and see what she's stepping into right now in her life. So today we're going to talk about Natalie and her sex and her new work that she's stepping into and the clarity that she's getting for herself and what's needed in the world. And what's so important about this conversation that we're about to be had is that I think this conversations and many more like this is the kind of conversations that's going to pave the way for the future of how people like my daughter, who's 12-year-old, who's going to grow up into relationship. Because up till now, like in my generations, I'm 47. So when I grew up, you know, I was told that relationship is you get to 18, you go to college, and then you try to meet the right guy, the guy, and then you're going to marry and stay there for the rest of your life and be happy and do everything you can to keep your house, your kids, and your husband intact together. And, you know, that didn't go exactly that for me, and it didn't go like that for many other people. And so I think there's a new conversation that we need to have with our children and the new generations that are coming into adulthood now, you know, that would offer them much more space, much more exploration, much more rewarding relationship. So that's what we're about to have. I'm so excited. So Natalie, come on in, honey.
Hi, May. Thank you so much for having me on.
Natalie, tell them a little bit about yourself, you know, like some boring stats, like how old you are, what's your last name, you know, where you live, you know, so just a normal human thing.
Should I sound boring when I say it, too, to emphasize it? I'm Natalie Vartanian. I'm 34. I'm Natalie Vartanian. I'm 34. I just moved to Austin, Texas. Both for just, it's been a dream of mine, and also the person I'm in a relationship with, my boyfriend, lover, whatever we want to call him, lives in Dallas, so close to him. And I have been a coach for the last 5 years, and my specialty now is sex and relationships, but specifically for unconventional people that want to question the status quo and you know, break through assumptions and create love their way.
Yeah, I love your new tagline, amazing love for unconventional people.
Yeah, I know you do.
So we have to start at the personal level, right? I don't know, what's unconventional about how you love?
Well, first of all, I think, and literally as I was going through and thinking about this for my business, you know, and I'm thinking about what makes someone unconventional, you know, entrepreneurs, travelers, you know, people that are maybe homosexual or polyamorous, you know, and I fit like almost all of those things, but I've been an entrepreneur for, oh my gosh, actually almost like 13, 14 years now. I've been my own boss in some capacity. I've been traveling hardcore for the last 3 years, and actually for about 2 of those years I didn't have a home. I was just nomading around the United States and in Costa Rica. And then it's, you know, coming up on almost a year of being in an open relationship. So lots of ways that I'm unconventional.
Well, it's so fun to hear your checklist because I measure it against my checklist when I was your age. You know, my checklist was, you know, do I have a great, reliable, steady, honest husband? Check. You know, did I buy a house when, you know, I could get into the market? Check. Do I have a car that is reliable? Check. Did I have a job that that pays me well with insurance and blah blah blah? Check. And vision and dental plan. Check.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And your list is like Costa Rica, living in a mobile home, traveling the country, doing YouTube videos, being an entrepreneur, making money as you go, and then, let's throw in the open relationship. Why not?
Well, and honestly though, May, like that checklist that you had for yourself, I had that too when I was 28.
Yeah.
Where I had the fiance, I had the condo, I had the car, I had the good job, and even like I was a stepmom. And one day I was thinking, how the hell did this happen? Like I never even envisioned that for myself, like when I was younger, but somehow along the way I feel like I just fell into what convention says a relationship and your life should look like.
Yeah, I think you are the new norms that's coming in. So I'm really excited to dig into this some more. And I love that you can speak. You're like the bridge to like next generation. I think maybe hopefully my daughter's generation, if not her daughter's generation.
Right.
They'll be like have a totally different checklist and different things, and they'll probably be half robots. And
I know.
Go to the moon or some other fancy planet for vacation. But right now, I just feel like you're right in that transition between being 28, having all of that offered to you, the things that we dreamt for, the condos and the fiancés and all that stuff, and then to break that and then to unleash yourself, and now you're here. Amazing love for unconventional people. Like you're learning to own this whole territory of unconventional people for yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I think even the craziest thing, because I did some digging end of last year, and this is before I even reconnected with the person that I'm dating now, and I was just like going through old journals and looking back to when I was 19, 20 years old, as I'm kind of, starting my sexual evolution and all of that, and thinking, whoa, I, even back then, never saw myself or wanted anything conventional, and was struggling with that at that time. And my mom would ask me, when are you going to get married? And I would tell her, I'm not getting married. I was just so defiant from so early on.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy to me to find myself, even a person that is considers herself such a rebel and defiant, falling into that.
Yeah. Yeah. So break it down for us. What was it like to have the condo and the fiance, and do you remember the thing that cracked you open, that had you say, you know what, I'm canceling the wedding?
Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that in so long. I literally had done a leadership course.
Yeah.
And not that I hadn't been in some way having those inklings and those thoughts, and we would fight and break up or almost break up and, continue in the relationship and all that stuff. But I did a leadership course, and, it was that constant message of, are you living the life that you want to live? This one precious life that you have.
That jam poem.
Yeah, right.
From Mary Oliver, right?
I know. Are you living that life? Those dreams you've had since you were a kid.
Right.
What happened to them?
Yeah.
You are responsible for your life. And my fiance at the time, my ex, we did that program together.
Yeah.
So talk about intense, so everything just had now not just a little flashlight, like a glaring spotlight on everything in our relationship, in our lives, what we wanted for the future. And I can't tell you what the thing was, that it was just a series of things of looking at my future and thinking, is this what I want? Is what I have now what I want for myself and what I've always wanted for myself? No. But I remember It was one day.
So here's the thing, though. I remember having the same conversation, but the answer for me was very obvious. It was like, well, what I think I want is dark and black and over there, and it's completely unknown. But what I have right here is clearly defined, and I can see it, and I can grab onto it. And somehow my DNA and my cultural upbringing and everything had me select this. Somehow had you select that.
Right.
Right? Isn't that interesting? Like, I think this is so cool that we can tease out and going, wait a minute, here's where humanity is starting to shift. This is not just a Natalie story. I think this is a big story for a lot of people your age right now.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? I mean, okay. So I know that for a long time I felt like there was something wrong with me because I wasn't in a relationship, because I didn't want to settle. I inside knew I want the kind of relationship I want. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but it isn't marriage, and it isn't, I want someone to travel with. I want someone to change the world with. I want to, do all these like crazy big dreams that I have, and I want that person with me. But I wasn't in a relationship for a long time in my life. So all of those voices around me as people are in relationships and getting married and having kids started having me think, like, is there something wrong with me? Why am I not in a relationship,
I could just see, it. What's wrong, Natalie? You're such a pretty girl. How could you not have a boy? What's wrong? Let me introduce you to, so-and-so over there.
Yeah, and it was those messages and the people, and again, it's not like, they're doing it to be assholes, but, those questions would come up of like, wait, what? You don't have a boyfriend? Why not?
No.
It's like
what's wrong with this picture?
Why not?
There's something wrong here that you don't have a boyfriend and that you're not on the marriage track, and then heaven forbid that you were on the marriage track and you got off of it, right?
Right, exactly. So that, I think a lot of that was what got me into that relationship, because I thought, what if I'm not good at relationships? What if I'm not good at commitment? What if there is something wrong with me? So it was almost like I got into my relationship to prove that was wrong and that wasn't true, that I was lovable, that I could be in a relationship.
Such an important point that you just stumbled onto. There are so many people your age that I know asking the same question. Like, they're like, what's wrong with me? I'm incapable of loving, because they measure it according to their parents, even though their parents went through a big old divorce, create all this pain for their family, blah, 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 but they're still measuring against this invisible scale, and they keep going, what's wrong with me that I can't be in a long-term relationship? What's wrong with me that I'm not married yet, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I actually had a girlfriend, she's 30. Just turned 30. She actually had to run a humongous marathon this year, but almost hurt her body, almost like cripple her body, because she wanted so much to prove to herself that there's nothing wrong with her. Somehow she equated that running this marathon and committing to this marathon and training herself, half a year long to do it, so that is her way of proving to herself that she's capable of loving a long-term relationship.
Oh my God, yeah, at the expense of, because I get into a relationship and I'm like, what the hell, this isn't what I wanted, and I realized, like, I am becoming someone I don't even like, and that actually was the straw that broke the camel's back of when I actually left. I remember looking at myself in the mirror, and I was acting like a raging bitch, May, and I am not that person, but picking fights with my partner and just being just mean, and I mean, I hate to admit it, but I was overtly flirting with other guys, like, in front of him, when that wasn't part of our agreement in the relationship, like, and I just looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, I can't stand this person that I've become. This is not me. I can't do this, and the next day I broke it off and I left.
Such courage and such clarity, even though I'm sure in that moment you felt so confused and so muddy and so lost, probably.
Yeah, if it wasn't literally for a group of people around me, like I said, because I was going and I was getting coaching, and I had a lot of people around me that were reflecting back to me what they saw.
Yeah.
And were holding my dreams and my visions as possible for me. Having me get clear on what I do want my ideal relationship to look like, and I would look at my current one and think, whoa, this is nowhere near what I actually want for myself and for a relationship. But it took like a year from when I first in my heart knew to when I left.
Yeah. So then let's go to now. So did you always knew that you were meant to be in a open relationship, polyamorous way of living and being in relationship, or is that just a new learning and discovery about yourself that you're having?
I think it's like it's a yes and, right? It's both in that from a really young age, I mean from like 12 or 13, I remember questioning and wondering if I was bisexual. You know, and not even being able to come to terms with that for such a long time. And always questioning if marriage was actually something that worked, because I saw a divorce and I saw my parents, and I just would look around and I couldn't visually see that many relationships that worked. Yeah. But it wasn't until probably a couple of years ago that I started just thinking, well, if marriage doesn't work or conventional relationships don't work, maybe monogamy isn't for everybody. And starting to, that question is actually more recent. Yeah.
That's a big question. That's a really big question.
Oh yeah. And then one of those things where I mean both, from when I used to wonder if I was bisexual to wondering if monogamy worked, it was something that I felt like I couldn't really talk to about with many people, because it's just such a, like, you don't question monogamy. You know, what are you kidding? You're going against the institution, like marriage and monogamy. It's like, oh.
Well, we have two things here, so just to question if you're bisexual, that is a very scary question.
Oh, it frightened me. I remember getting and again, this, I started wondering this from like so young, and then
how old is so young?
Like 12 or 13.
Okay, already. Wow.
Yeah, wondering that, and then I remember, I don't know how old I was. I think I want to say I was 15 or 16 when I remember going to the library, and I don't think I've told anybody this story, or like one or two people, but I went to the library and I actually started looking at books of like, how can you tell if you're bisexual, because I was like, again,
how would you even know that concept though? How would you even know this concept of bisexual at 12?
Well, yeah, my brother is actually gay, and he came out when he was 11. Yeah. So I feel like my mom had gay friends, and I feel like it wasn't anything that was hidden around us. Okay. But it doesn't mean that it was accepted in our household, if that makes sense,
It's one of those I love you, but
Right. Oh yeah. And when my brother came out, my mom, it was really hard for her. Really, really hard for her. So, especially after seeing the way she was with my brother.
Right.
I was like, oh, there's no way in hell I'm going to talk about this stuff. Like, I'm going to put a lockdown on it even more so.
Right. Recently I learned about the brain and how it works, and not only are you dealing with society and cultural upheaval right here by being bisexual, or even questioning that you're bisexual, but literally it triggers the part of the amygdala. I cannot say that word.
I probably wouldn't be able to say it either.
I was using my Asian card, so thank you for sitting in there with me there. But that survival, primitive Neanderthal brain that we carry with us, that part of our brain has the imprint of like thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, where we were cavemen and cavewomen, and we're being cast out of a group of your tribe means death. That's it. Like, you can't survive on your own. You got to be part of this tribe. So if you stand out and you've done something and they throw you out, you are guaranteed, to be dinosaur food or something like that, right? So that's what's inside us. So I could just see, you looking at your brother and seeing him disappointing your mother and, literally being cast out. Things are not the same anymore. He's not her cute little boy, that innocent little boy anymore. Right. And seeing for yourself, holy shit, I'm going to be cast out too.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I mean, and it was that kind of thought because, in our household, you didn't say the G word. Like, it was almost like it never happened. My mom was definitely like, that's just a phase he's going through,
So instead of the G word, you use the B word. It's half as bad. It's not quite
right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. And even I even remember when I took a leave of absence from school and I went to go live with my best friend and her school friends. I took a year off and I went down to where my best friend went to college, and I lived with her and 3 other college students. And when I told my mom that I was moving, because I was moving in with 4 women, she literally asked me, Natalie, I'm just afraid that you're going to be a lesbian and you're never going to find a man and have a husband.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So I guess, and I intuitively knew that she was probably thinking these things. So again, I just kept a lid on all that.
So, but did you?
And it was hard.
Did you get to explore your lesbian side?
I did. When I moved away, like 18, 19, I started to, and it wasn't intentional. They were accidents and they happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't often, but and that was the first sexual experience I had actually, was kissing and like playing with a woman.
I'm listening to this through a very heterosexual, mind frame, and I'm just like thinking, Jesus Christ, at that age, it was scary enough to deal with a boy, to get close to a boy, to even kiss him and touch his hands or even whatever, and I was a late bloomer. I was still trying to hold hands at 18. But anyway, but just to go beyond that and to get it on with a girl, it's just like so many layers that I would have to hurdle over to even allow that energy to connect. I mean, I don't allow that energy to connect until I'm like way older, until I was 39. That's when I kind of like peekaboo and let some of that out. But, at 18, I was just like completely shut down. We are going to be appropriate if it's going to kill me.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Honestly, I think it was the fear of being with a man was way stronger than the fear of being with a woman. I was deathly afraid of being with guys because of the stuff with my dad and him leaving and all of that stuff. So I feel like I hadn't even kissed anybody by 18.
Yeah.
When I was with this woman, and she was a really, really, really good friend of mine. Yeah. And it was almost like I don't want to say she took pity on me, but she was like, Natalie, you've never kissed anybody before? And she was older. She was like 10 years older.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it started. We had all been drinking, and she's like, well, let me at least, like, this is what it's like. Let me at least kiss you. Like, it started out as her, like, wanting to teach me.
Yeah.
And, and that's what that experience was. It was, God, yeah, so interesting. But it was that. I was so definitely afraid of being with guys sexually that door kind of opened, and it became even more confusing, actually.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and we'll hear more about the confusion and then also the open relationship and how you set up your life now. And speaking of confusing, this commercial is for those who might be confused.
Is your marriage or relationship in crisis? Where one partner wants to expand into their sex and bring scary changes to the relationship, while the other partner is dug in, protective, and saying, "No way in hell is this going to happen." May knows this place well, and she can help both sides. She is truly amazing. Learn more about her specialty, crisis coaching for couples and individuals, at sexliesandconsciousness.com.
I think I am catching them. I'm catching the generation before your generation. Like you're catching the 30-something, unconventional people who already know that they're unconventional before they get married, and now are empowering themselves to be in unconventional yet amazing love relationship. And I'm catching the people like me who were very conventional, try our best to be conventional, got stuck in the conventional, finally got brave enough to just go, I don't think I'm conventional, truth be told, at 40 or 50 that I am just like not like that at all. And now that I have all these children and houses and bills and everything, I need to break all that up so that I can just free myself up, and there's just so much chaos and mayhem and shame and so much pain in that crisis moment.
Yeah.
So you're catching them before they get into the crisis moment, and I'm catching them right after the crisis moment.
Well, yeah, that's my hope. I'm hoping to catch them before crisis moment.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. And or like at the beginning of your relationship, or when you're single and before you, set up your relationship, like, let's talk about this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because I heard one of my favorite sex educator out there is this guy named Reed Mahalko. Have you met him or seen him or attended any of his courses?
Oh my gosh, his name just came across to me recently. Yes.
Well, he's a big player in San Francisco, and I think he's getting more and more popular, and I keep talking about him. So, Reed, you don't know about me, but I really do love your work out there. I just think you're hot. Anyway, and he said something that just imprinted my mind. And I just heard this like 6 months ago in San Francisco. He said, we all have relationship and sex profiles that if we are true to our profile, our true self, we would be like driving a car with no brakes on. Like, it's good. We're cruising and we have life and relationship exactly the way we want it. But most of the time, we try to be a monogamous relationship and set that way because we are taught that way. So it's kind of like driving with the brakes on all the time, because you got to always constrain yourself and hold yourself back to be appropriate. And I just think that is so profound. Mm-hmm. But there is one little problem to that, which is no one told me I had more than one option.
Right.
No one said that there are like many types of relationship and many types of setting up your life so that you can be really happy in.
Yeah, no one told me that either.
Right. So that's why I think this conversation is so important for us to be having. Is like, I want you and I to say, hey, wait, there are many different types, and here's how Natalie does it. So how do you do it, honey?
Well, and it's funny because the first time I tried to be in an open relationship, and it's with my same partner, when I first met him, he was in a relationship. He had a girlfriend, and he was first exploring polyamory. So I was his first experiment with polyamory, as he had a girlfriend, and so he was looking at it as having multiple girlfriends.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out with us the first time around, and so I was the person that kind of came in to a relationship that was already kind of set up, and I was, on another relationship in that dynamic. But this time around, when we reconnected and set it up, and we literally had those conversations, and it was my coach that asked me, like, what does commitment look like to you? What does open look like to you? And for me to explore that on my own, and I realized what I wanted and what we talked about was I wanted to have a primary relationship. So him and I are boyfriend and girlfriend. We are the couple.
Yep.
And everything on the outside is more a casual relationship as opposed to having multiple what feels like spiritual, emotional, mental, physical relationships, which is what he was trying the first time.
Yeah.
And realized, actually I don't know if I want that and or am capable of that. So, I mean, I feel like we're still very much in an exploratory phase ourselves.
I think your whole life is going to be, honey.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is. It's true. And even when I sat down and thought about my ideal relationship, it's like I want to be with someone where we can decide those things together of how open is it? How, do we need to close it sometimes? Do we need to expand or contract? And because that is life.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, and that's to me the beauty of having an open relationship. We're not saying it has to be one way.
Yep.
We can decide that together, and it will evolve as we evolve.
So you want to hear something really cool?
What?
Well, I'm going to do a radio show with this person. His name is Dr. Robert. Oh my gosh, my brain just went dead. He says it all the time. Well, actually, he goes by Dr. Robert. So he's Dr. Robert, founder of Sex Coach U, sexcoachu.com.
Huh,
and he said that his training school, him and Dr. Patty created this school to train new sex coaches, and they are expanding like crazy, and there are demands for their training. And in his program, he trained coaches around BDSM, around open relationship, polyamory, all sorts of stuff, and also pathology and blah blah blah, all the not so fun stuff too around sex and all sides of sex.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was so cool from that conversation is that he said that one of the places that they are expanding into is in Poland. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, so why? What's going on in Poland? He said, in Warsaw, Poland especially, there is a pocket of growing people who are really spiritually oriented and who really believe that learning to be in a polyamorous relationship is the key to world peace.
Wow.
I know, right? And so it just resonates so true for me, because I know being in a polyamorous relationship, you have to negotiate so differently, and you have to look and think and I don't know, it requires so much more level of thinking and your heart being invested and all these acceptance and everything that goes into a polyamory versus a monogamous relationship.
I totally agree.
All right?
The level, well, yes, and the level of communication that has to happen and connection that has to happen. And again, and I tell my monogamous friends this too. It's like, it's not that that's not present with monogamy.
Yep.
It's just, it's a whole other level when you're in an open relationship, because the dynamics are more than just you and your partner.
Well,
there's way more to negotiate.
And to put it bluntly, well, I'm not saying that it's better. Like we're not saying it's better or worse or anything. Right? It's just that you're constantly have stuff thrown in your face that you have to constantly look at your own sense of security inside the relationship, your own level of jealousy, your own control issue, your own. So it's all in your own ability to be in relationship in an unconditional way. Most of us, when we really look at how we are in relationship, it's very conditional.
Yeah.
So I think polyamory is just like the reason why you have to negotiate so much and all that stuff, because you're always bombarded with stuff that makes you so uncomfortable and so threatening.
Oh man, I remember, God, over Memorial Weekend, I was telling friends that it was so uncomfortable. It was one of those weekends where I had such great moments with my partner because we've reached like new levels of vulnerability and communication. But up until that point, I just either wanted to crawl out of my skin and or literally get in my car and drive back home.
Aww.
You know, it was just so painful because all of these things were coming up and I was looking at them and questioning them and thinking like, does he not want to be with me, and why does he want to be with these other people? And even though I do too, you know, and I have, you know, someone that I see on a semi-regular basis, but it just, all of this stuff was coming up and I just didn't want to deal with it or be with it or think like, is this even worth it? And, you know, all of this stuff. But once we got past those like little hurdles and were able to talk through them, it just was such a beautiful thing to feel so connected and honestly say to this man, I love you for exactly the person you are. I don't want to change you, you know, and for him to say back, that is such a rare thing to hear, you know, such a rare thing to hear.
Well, I want us to change that paradigm. I want to take a stand that it's actually not such a rare thing to hear. That is what's coming into the world. And I'm just going to hold that we are learning to say things like that to each other and be in relationship like that with each other, whether we're in monogamous or polyamorous relationship.
Well, that's definitely my stand. That is my stand because it's true. It doesn't matter what type of relationship. Those are baseline ways of, to me, being with another human being that I love you with your quirks and all, with your flaws and all, with your perfection and all, with your amazingness and all. These are the reasons why I love you. You are an perfectly imperfect human being.
Yeah, and I want to spend a couple moments sharing from the monogamous side of like having equally powerful conversation like what you just said, you know.
Right.
Because I'm in relationship with a man who I am monogamous with.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly because he prefers it that way. He's not ready to do the poly thing. Okay. And for me, I am too tired to do the poly thing. I mean, it comes down to how much resource, time, energy do I have? Can I manage another relationship? The answer is between my daughter, my work, and my boyfriend, I got nothing left. You know, I got just me left. So I'm choosing not to be in polyamorous relationship, and I'm choosing not to push for it. However, I don't want to silence that part of me, and I don't want to pretend like I am a Joe Blow monogamous gal that loves it that way, you know. And he knew that when he first met me, but over time, we just kind of grow into being a monogamous couple. And it's so important to me that I remind myself that by clearly articulating that to him. So whenever I find myself attracted to a new man or a woman or something, you know, I make it a point to come home and find ways to share it with him and still express my wish, which is I still would like, you know, I want the primary thing with you, and I want us to make these decisions together, and I want to be able to, you know, go and lift my skirt and ride that guy for, you know, however long I want to ride it and come home and know that I am more full and more complete because I got to do that with myself.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing to, over the years, we've been together for 4 years now, to learn to have that conversation so that it's a loving conversation rather than a blame and shame conversation.
Yes. And you know what? And that's such a great point because I often look back at my relationship with my ex-fiance, and we were together for 2.5 years. And, you know, I'm just a flirty person, okay? Like, that's just my nature. And I know you relate to that, May. I just am. That's just who I am. Yeah. I love flirting. I love just being that way in the world. It's who I am. And I think it would have been different if him and I were able to have those kinds of conversations where I'm not made to feel bad or wrong for feeling like that or being like that. Because it wasn't that I wasn't satisfied with him, but it was that, you know,
that's how you were made up.
Yeah.
And that's your fire. And if you put that out, you're dead.
Right. And not to even be able to have a space to like talk about it in a non-judgmental, open way, it wore away at me.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely it did.
See, it's
I
like
yeah.
driving with the brakes on.
Right.
You know, you constantly have to pull yourself back to please him and to be appropriate by him.
Mhm.
Oh,
I tell him, I'm like, oh man, I would love to see you flirting with another woman. Are you kidding me? You know, and I think it would totally turn me on.
but you know what? I had to learn something along the way with that one, because at first I thought it was just all I had to do was to tell my boyfriend that this is what I like and I still want it, and and I expected him to hear it and be good with it, be okay, I expected him to be good with it. But what happened is that he would go sideways in those conversations. We'd be driving and I'm like, oh, by the way, I have to just tell you this, just had this big old, flirt with this guy and just would love to just like ride him. Can I? Like that's how I do it, And he'd be like, no, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. And then he'd go sideways. And then, of course, he would be like, why do you still need that? Don't we have a really great relationship right now with each other? Aren't I enough? So it kind of comes down to that for him. And then I have to go to, well, it's not about you being enough, this is just how I am. And then I get all defensive, like, you knew me like this when when you met me. Now we're escalating. And then one time, several iterations of these conversations,
right,
it just hit me. And I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm going to say shit like that to him, he gets to say shit like that back to me. And
right.
I need to be okay with that. I don't get to go to being angry at him for being hurt that I still want this.
Yeah.
Right? I have to learn to listen to that and go, yeah, that's what it's like for you to hear me say that still now in our relationship. I get it. I get that that's painful to you. Rather than, do my whole escalation and everything.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's true. That's true. Just honoring, because just like you're saying, I want to speak my truth, he gets to speak his truth too in those moments.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure, like, in your moment of going, I want to get in my car and get the hell out of here, I want to go home and just, like, do the traditional thing, you get to have those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the, and remembering in those moments too of, what do I want to be different about this relationship than I have with anybody else? And it's I want to hold that this person loves me unconditionally and I can say whatever I need to say to him, just like I want him to say whatever he needs to or wants to say to me. And I had to, like, literally constantly remind myself of that as I'm about to have these, like, super difficult. It felt like it was a fucking weekend of difficult conversations. I was like, or challenging conversations. But like I said, on the other side, though, it was so much space.
Well, there's I don't know who said this, but what I remember that I love about this quote is, on the other side of conflict is intimacy.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? But we're also afraid of conflict. We do our best to avoid conflict. What we end up doing is we avoid intimacy.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So let's talk a few minutes about what does it take, like at a more, everyday level, what does it take to set up an open relationship?
Oh, wow. And I'm going to admit too, this is my first real open relationship. So I'm learning these things. So asterisk footnote, like, I'm learning these things too as I'm going. But
honey, you're an expert, and an expert just means that you are walking one step ahead of us. That's all.
Yeah, right.
So you're one step ahead. Tell us, what does it take for you to set up your open relationship?
Well, we definitely talked about all of this in the beginning before we really decided to be, in a committed relationship with each other. Even when we were in the courting stages, we would have our weekly phone dates, and because we were long distance at the time too. But we would talk about what we needed and wanted, what that looked like, even as far as, even how much do you want to hear about the other people that I'm seeing or sexual experiences that I'm having.
Natalie, hang on. Slow down for a second, because, a lot of people don't even know how to say or get it out of their mouth what you just said. So as a woman, how do you say to a man who you are very interested in, who has, connection there, who you want to build a future with, to say, like, give us some words, some phrases that you remember you said that you're like, oh my gosh, if he hear me say this, he's gonna want to quit.
Yeah. So, and I remember the reason I felt that I needed to talk about that with him was because he knew that I was exploring, again, my bisexual side. He had made a comment that that's hot. So I felt that I could talk about when I was with another woman. Mm-hmm. But I found myself holding back when I was sharing about being with other guys.
Yep.
Like an assumption that, that's different, that would make him jealous, that, it's okay for me to be with another woman but not with another man.
Right.
So I literally said it like that. I'm a big believer in just stating what's up for you in the moment. So I told him, I find myself not sharing with you when I'm with another guy. And I find it easier for me to share with you when I'm with another woman because I've heard you say that, how you feel about that.
Right.
And I don't want to assume that. So
which is it for you?
Yeah, and I don't want to assume that. So are you okay with me talking about other guys, or what are you okay with as far as us talking about being with other partners? And that's when he had the opportunity to tell me what worked for him. And for him, it's like, oh man, you can tell me about whatever. I don't care. And it's like, oh, sweet, and vice versa. He said and asked me that too. What about you? What would you be okay with? Are you okay with talking about, me talking about anything? I said, yeah, I would love to hear that. And then we got to talk about why we're setting it up that way. That, to me, celebrating, it's almost like a celebrating. I want my boyfriend to tell me when he had a great experience. If he went out and had fun at an amusement park and came back, oh man, I had the best day of my life. I went on this ride and it was so fun. I'm happy for him. And we talked about that's what it feels like for us to be able to share that stuff.
Okay, so all this sounds very idyllic until I start to play this thing out in my head and I go, oh, wait a minute. This is what my limitation. Do you remember when I said I made poly, but right now I'm too tired and too lazy for poly? Yeah, so I'm thinking, okay, so let's play this out. So he lives in Dallas and you live in Austin. So you don't see it in your face, right?
No.
So I make up a story that there's it's easier and it's more complex because there's a lot of mystery in there. So when you don't see things, you may make up stuff that's even bigger in your head than what's true.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I do.
Right. Hey, you're still normal. Right. You're not that unconventional. Anyway.
I know.
So then he goes out to this girl and you think, oh my gosh, he comes home and he's like, I'm in love. She's amazing. And what if he says that? Like, I'm in love. She's amazing. You should have seen her. She's a poet. She's a dancer. I'm just listing all the things that I find threatening against
Right.
And, she's smart and she makes billions of dollars and, blah, blah, blah. And she's got big boobs and whatever, whatever that list is. What do? How is it for you to really hear that?
I don't know because he doesn't share to that level of detail. Because our thing is whatever you want to share, I'm fine hearing.
Oh.
And so he hasn't shared that stuff with me. I'll ask him sometimes, like, hey, have you been dating anybody? Or, what's that like? Have you been sleeping with anybody? What's that like? Like, I'll ask him and it's been fine. What I found actually threatening, and I'll just share this because, we're openly sharing about our edges. My edge was that same weekend, that Memorial weekend, we were together, and I have this thing about quality time. When I'm with you, I don't see you for sometimes 2 weeks.
Right. Yep.
So when I'm with you, I expect you to be with me. When you're not with me, do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
So when we were together, like, he was on his phone a lot that weekend, and he made a comment like, oh man, a lot of people have been hitting me up on, on the dating site or whatever it was. And it's like, okay, and that wasn't a big deal. But it was me noticing him like messaging somebody while we were together, like with me, and it just started to bother me so much.
Yeah.
Like, and those things came up of, what the hell? Am I not, like, I'm right here. Am I not enough? Do you need to now also be talking to someone else at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
And so those things started happening for me
But see, that's what we don't see, is that those are the things that we're the one that got triggered by it, need to look at, right? I mean, it's like, suddenly it brings up enough issues for you. Like, am I not enough, And then there's some controlling issues in there too. It's like, hey, I made a rule, why don't you follow this thing? Like, you know how we all do this. I mean, good God, I have a whole long list of rules that my poor boyfriend can or cannot do, even though I sound so enlightened.
Well, and that was a funny thing. I realized of like, oh, wait, I mean, how does he know? That whole he's not a mind reader, when I realized, wait, he doesn't even know that bothers me because I never told him that bothers me.
Right.
The whole, because he went right to, oh, what, so I can't even like, I mean, are you going to tell me that I can't be with anybody, like text anybody or be on the phone with anybody while I'm with you? And I was like, wait, first of all, I didn't say that, second of all, no.
But you imply it though, sister.
Right. So, and then, having these conversations of what do I mean?
Yeah.
What do I want? And we get to talk about this, is that what he will be able to do or not in return? But it's still freaking uncomfortable. Like you said, as much work as I've done on myself, as much communication as I do, it's still in those moments I felt like I was back to my teenage years, not being able to like communicate.
Absolutely. Yeah, to me, when I was exploring polyamory and opened myself up, and I didn't have a primary partner, so I was just in exploration mode with different men and just teaching myself the undoing of me and all of my edges and controlling issues and insecurities and everything. It was just overwhelming, the long list of stuff that I have to face for myself.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your work, like what, and the retreat that's coming up.
Oh, lovely. So the work that I do is either with singles that are looking to be in a relationship or couples that want to really be intentional in their relationship. So with singles, a lot of times I find we don't even know what we want. Mm-hmm. So that exploration you were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Like find out your sexual and relationship profile. Like what you really like, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. And look at your belief systems about love and sex in general. Like, what are your beliefs? Because they're informing your patterns and how you're acting in relationship. Look at your old past relationships. Like, we do autopsies and look at what worked, what didn't work. Use them as learning tools. So all of this will inform what you want and what works for you. And then play, experiment. We get to find out what works for you and doesn't work for you. And now you can speak from experience as opposed to hypothesizing what works for you or not. So that's the singles work, and then the couples work is looking at your communication. And same thing, where each individual gets to look at their relationship histories, their beliefs around love and sex, and then we look at communication together. We look at designing, like all those questions that I said I had with my boyfriend in the beginning.
Yeah.
Going through that list of questions of, what does love look like to you? How do you feel loved? How do you show up when you're angry? Like, what do you do? Just all these questions to inform so that we can actually be in a relationship together in a much more intentional way. So those are the two main ways I work with couples and then, or couples and singles. And I'm holding a retreat at the end of October in Cancun for a week. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have, actually, one of the speakers is the one that told me about Reed. She's a female pickup artist in New York. Awesome. She wrote this book called The New Rules of Attraction, and so we're going to have her do a class on the art of seduction.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're going to have, various speakers. Another speaker is an executive coach, so talking about like where business meets pleasure, how to interact or interrelate with, your professional world and your personal world, talking about getting intentional about what you want in relationships. We're going to have yoga instructors and someone teaching about Tantra. So looking at it from all these different angles of dating and sex and relationships and love, and both for singles and couples. Like, I want it to be all inclusive.
That's awesome. I can't wait for you. That sounds really fun.
I know.
Ian, next year I need to be on that list. Like, come on now. How did I miss out on that?
Yeah, well, we're gonna definitely see how this goes. It's definitely a playful experimentation kind of thing as to, this is the first time I've done anything like this, but I'm so confident in the need for it in the space and kind of the reaction that people have been having of, wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds like something I want to be a part of or attend. I wish I had something like that. And we're going to be at a freaking 4-star resort in Cancun. I mean, how much
badass
can that be? Yeah, to have as a playground.
Well, the only thing that I think about that is it's like, I hope people don't just drink their ass off and then, I hope that it's an awake and stay awake and really enjoy the real moment rather than cover it up with alcohol so that you can loosen up and try things that you've never tried before.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be me holding that space because to me, I am very, as much as like I'm all about like fun and partying and all that, I am also very intentional in this is important work.
That's right.
This is you getting to do that self-analysis and that work, that experimentation and all of that to find and have the love that you want, whether you're in a relationship or not. So, yeah, it'll be both. It'll be fun, but it's also going to be intentional and transformational.
That's right.
Sure.
So, amazing love for unconventional people. Love it. So, they find you by going to NatalieVartanian.com?
It's actually NatalieTheCoach.com. And there's a tab at the top for the Rad Love. It's called the Rad Love Retreat. So you can find out more information about the retreat. You can find out more information about me and how to work with me. But, again, it's NatalieTheCoach.com.
Excellent. And for me, I work with the couples who have been married for a long time, and you are now in that crisis mode of like somehow your relationship has deadened or your husband cheat or your wife had an affair on you and you guys don't know how to come back and reconnect. And you think from the old paradigm, you think that something terribly wrong happened and you wish you could get over it so that you can move on. It's actually a huge gift that just happened for you. Like one of you got really courageous and opened up the conversation so that you can now have a real conversation with each other on how to build the next phase of your relationship. So if you are in that mode, or if you're a divorced woman who are dating again and are looking to rebuild your relationship, I offer you a beautiful complimentary discovery session. Every show that I do, I open up my calendar and offer one slot for whoever that would just randomly want to take me up on it. So go to my website, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, or maivucoach.com, MAIVU coach.com. There's a big yellow button on there that said, book your session. Sign up for a complimentary with me. I will totally show you the way. Let's just put it that way. All right.
Yeah,
so thank you. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Natalie. It was beautiful. I really love having this conversation because truly, to me, this is the way of the future. We need to get on board with this and open up the conversation and make relationships, give us more choices around relationships. So thanks for sharing your story and being honest and being vulnerable with us.
Thank you so much. This was fun. This was informative, and for me too. There was the opening and being vulnerable and intimacy that came on the other side of that. So thank you so much for providing
you bet,
the opportunity.
Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Do you want more sex, lies, and consciousness? Access our archives at sexliesandconsciousness.com. While you're there, please leave your comments or suggestions for the show and participate in current SLC conversations with other listeners worldwide.